The first thing you want to keep in mind is that emotional intelligence is not actually a scientific term. Like, there have been plenty of attempts, plenty of books written on this topic, plenty of people trying to standardize it, but after all, it's only a concept. And more recently, I've also read that there are some significant question marks when it comes to how those studies saying that emotional intelligence is, up to 80% relevant of defining a successful candidate or even a successful human being, Then, starting from these assumptions, understanding, that these are just concepts, I wanted to talk about what does this mean for a technical candidate. And I find two scenarios. Let's start with the less common of them. So it's less common for a technical candidate to be a great speaker and basically someone good at, reading the room and, the emotional intelligence elements. Now, in this scenario, it's not as straightforward as you might think. So if this is your strength, it's not necessarily that you want to push on your strength during the entire conversation you have with an interviewer, but rather I would advise you to use your strength to actually read the room and actually read the interviewer and find out what they're actually looking for from the ideal candidate. If they're looking for someone with particularly strong leadership skills and they couldn't care less about the technical side of things, that's perfectly fine. You can push ahead with your leadership and with what you enjoy doing best. But what I know from experience is that this is not as often as you might expect the case. And what I'm saying here, if you understand that the employer is not actually looking for someone, who primarily is good at making speeches and all that stuff, then you should adjust your performance accordingly, because I bet that you, as a technical candidate, because this is the topic of this video, you would very much prefer that role, even without the opportunity to make speeches in the first 6 months of the job. So again, use your core strength to your advantage, that is to read the room, read your candidate, and read the employer. And once you find out those 1-2 things that they are really looking from you, that's when you can actually get the best benefits from that experience. Now, the second scenario, and this is the most common scenario, where technical candidates are not really great speakers, are not supposed to be good at these things of emotional intelligence. The thing here, so there are two parts. First of all, the assessment. Before the interview, when you prepare for the interview, find out, are you good at these things or aren't you good at these things? How do you find out? Well, speak in the mirror, record yourself, role play with a friend. Use my free role-play service to find someone to role-play with and to find out, how it goes, the conversation. But really assess yourself and know your starting point in the conversation. If you're someone, they are so-so, probably don't have a lot of work in this area. But if you're someone who's really bad at it, then yes, you must ramp up your performance, because, this emotional intelligence is part of the leadership component. And leadership is something hugely important, especially for high-performing companies. Now, this is for the preparation part. And the self-assessment, and trust me when I tell you that most candidates don't self-assess themselves properly going into any job interview. They just prepare on what they think would be best, and oftentimes what they feel the most comfortable preparing on. Now, during the interview, that this thing, the emotional intelligence thing, is not your thing, right? Then why push it? Don't push it. You should just push it to the extent that you're comfortable doing it. So if you're not smiling all the time, then don't smile. I'm not saying not to smile at all during 1 hour conversation. That will probably look awkward. But you could smile every now and then, every 20 minutes, I don't know. But don't push it too hard on these things. And you could also eventually diagnose yourself on how hard can you go, how hard can you push it during the role play sessions if you want. So it's hugely important that you don't look at someone desperate to get the job. There's a huge difference between actually some people even say it, I really want this job, and that's fine. But if you look desperate for that job, especially for a high-paying job, that won't come across as quite interesting. And don't try to please the interviewer for the sake, of the interviewing, because you think, if you don't please the interviewer, then, it's not going to be good for you. Try to be yourself and try to do whatever makes sense to you, and only push the limits as far as you're comfortable pushing them. If you don't feel like it's to your advantage, like I said before, to be all smiles and all that stuff, don't do it. And trust me, you can still get the job this way. There's plenty of examples of this. Even further, it might come across as you having backbone, to be yourself, and to have that proper attitude that they're looking for in the job. Just know your strength and know your weakness, and this is when the best formula for both preparing and actually running an interview in this context of leadership and emotional intelligence.